So, alright, so Marie McWilliams put out a horror tag for horror fans and asked a number of questions. So I decided as a... Sorry, my nose is itchy. I decided as a sort of an introduction, I would try the tag. So the questions are, 1. What was the first horror movie you remember seeing? Now, there may have been other horror movies, but the first one that I really remember was The Exorcist. I was 6 years old, and there was a babysitter who watched the movie with me in the room. And I watched most of it from behind a pillow. And to this day, honestly, I can't watch The Exorcist by myself. I recognize it as a really great movie, but, scares the crap out of me. What was the first horror book that you remember reading? Not just the first horror book, but also the first adult book I read. I was 8 years old, and it was Carrie. And I picked it up at a table at school. It was some kind of fair, carnival, flea market kind of thing. What is the movie that made you a horror fan? You know what? I am not sure, but I would probably go with Carrie as well. Channel 50 out of Detroit, when I was a kid, had horror movies. Every Saturday afternoon there was the Thriller double feature, and there was also the Saturday Shocker on Channel 20, and they showed a lot of horror movies. What is the book that made you a horror fan? Well, that's also a hard question. Like most people of a certain age, I'm a lifelong Stephen King fan. And so, of course, growing up in the 70s and 80s, Stephen King was a staple. So I'm going to have to say probably It. I mean, I was already sort of a reader, but I think that was really the book that made me a horror fan. What is your favorite horror movie of all time? I'm going to have to say... Oh, that's a difficult one, too. I'm going to have to say probably a tie between The Exorcist 3, which is just a really great movie. I mean, it's wonderfully acted, incredibly suspenseful, best jump scare of all time, and a really, it's a really good example of horror done right. And then the other is Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, Dream Warriors, because it was everything 80s that I loved. And when I was a teenager, I was a big fan of the Nightmare on Elm Street series. What is your favorite horror book? Also It by Stephen King. But I will also say I always want to plug my own anthology that I edited, Not Just a Pretty Face, Women of Horror Volume 1, from Deadlight Publishing, and edited by yours truly. There's a really solid collection of stories from women horror authors, and I hope you'll check it out. I'll put the link in the description. What's your favorite horror trope? Although I am tempted to say black dude dies first, because it's always fun to just see, are they going to go with that or not? But I would probably say The Final Girl is probably my favorite. I remember reading Men, Women, and Chainsaws for a university course, and, just enjoying seeing how the trope is developed and played with and subverted in various films and books. Why do you love horror? 2 reasons. The first is, at its heart, horror is about people, about families, and about how people can overcome obstacles. And when well drawn, you care about the characters. That's why you care if they die or not. I mean, most of horror really just comes down to how not to die. And so the best horror always has the best characters. And the other thing that I like about horror is that real life is scary. And in horror, a lot of the time, the monster is bested and there's a happy ending. Or, I mean, not always a happy ending, but a satisfying ending. So that's why I love horror. It's much tidier than real life, even no matter how scary it is or how intense it is. It usually does come to a conclusion. So that's it for me, and I just want to say thank you to Marie McWilliams for putting out the the horror tag, and hopefully other people will take up the challenge. Thank you.